XML formatting. One of the major changes in Office 2007, and this happened a little behind the scenes, was that the default file format was changed to an XML-based format. Now I know that a lot of people may have noticed the extensions have changed. They added an X. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in this chapter, I want to go into detail about the differences between the old format and the new format. That way, you'll know what considerations there are and how to make the best choice. We also want to talk about how to convert back and forth between the two formats. So, if you're ready to learn about XML, at least in depth enough to know what Office offers you, then this chapter is for you. I am well aware that you don't have to know all of the intricacies about XML in order to use Office or Office 2007. But I also know, after more than 15 years of training, that when I give people a bit of background information, they can understand the why behind what they're doing, and they can then make better choices. Because there's never just one choice. There are options, and we have to know what those options entail in order to make better choices. So let's do a little bit of XML 101 if you like. And of course, that would start off with an explanation of the acronym XML. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. The X, of course, is from extensible, and the M and the L are from markup language. It was actually introduced in the 1990s by Microsoft, and it's a markup language, like HTML, that uses tags. Many of you are familiar with HTML or the language of web pages. And the thought of a tag is simply a marker, if you like, that defines what something is. For HTML, it defines formatting. For example, a B tag means make this bold. A U tag could be underlined, or an I tag would represent italics. XML is going to be a little different, but the concept is exactly the same. Both of these, HTML and XML, are flexible, universal formats for structured documents. What XML does is it actually stores data as plain text and then uses the tags to identify what the data is, not necessarily how it's formatted. In other words, HTML uses the formatting tags, while XML actually identifies what the data is. The tags in XML are customized, and this enables you to define, transmit, validate, and then interpret what the data is, and not only in one application, but between applications, and that's where the true power comes in. The next question you might have is, okay, I understand that, but why do I care? Well, you care because it's a common, universal data format, and if you think a bit more about it, maybe what you know about data is that sometimes it can be tabbed, delimited, and you can open tabbed, delimited data in a variety of applications. The same thing is true here. Because it's universal, that makes it flexible, which means that it can be read by various applications, various platforms, and various browsers. So yes, we can certainly use it in Office on a Windows environment using Internet Explorer 8. We all know that. But it actually goes further beyond that. Any application that can read XML can use it, and it can go across platforms, including Linux and the Mac. We can also use something called a standard transformation. Now, I know this is getting a little technical, but basically it means that we can very simply extract and repurpose the content to be used in a variety of different places in a variety of different ways. In addition, XML files are frequently smaller, sometimes up to 75% smaller than the old binary version. That means that they're going to be easier to store and they're going to be easier to transmit, for example, over the internet or in an email. And all of this makes sense when you think about how we use computers and technology today. Another interesting thing is that macro code is not supported by default, so there are fewer security issues. If you're moving these files back and forth across firewalls, between locations, or between people, you're probably not going to come up against security issues. Now, there is an option in Office to save them that are macro code enabled, and we'll look at that later. But the default is that XML is very safe and very secure, and so it doesn't run into issues traveling across networks. Since the container is actually part of the formatting, and the XML data is something different, then if the container itself gets corrupted, that's the formatting part, the data is just fine. So this means that in the rare instance that a file does get corrupted, we can probably recover the data, even though you may have to add some formatting. And all of this comes about because we need to move gradually from the old binary formats. You know, the .doc and the .ppt that we no longer need to use because they don't really meet the new demands of how we work now. They were great 20 or 30 years ago, but technology has changed, and the way we work has changed, and therefore the file format has to change as well. So, as far as Microsoft Office is concerned, how did XML evolve? XML support was first introduced in Excel in Office 2000 and was known as OpenXML. XML for Word was added in Office 2002 or Office XP. Microsoft announced that it was co-sponsoring standardization of the new format with ECMA International in 2005. And that standardized format is called Office Open XML, which is sometimes abbreviated as OOXML. Word and Excel XML support continued into Office 2003, and then, almost a decade later, XML became the default file format, beginning in Office 2007. So, people who say XML is new are actually a little bit mistaken, because it's been around for a while, although it wasn't in the forefront. We actually get to see it in 2007 and 2010 as the default file format brought to the forefront. So, how do we work, and what do we care about XML and Office 2007? Well, it's important to note that both of these versions still support the older binary formats. This means that you can still work with the old PowerPoint, Excel, and Word formats that you've always been used to. But it is very easy to upgrade or to convert the binary files to the XML format. Converting them actually allows you to have new functionality. This is going to be the Office and features that are so phenomenal. Do you have to have the new features? Well, no, but just like we moved from using a manual typewriter to working on a word processor, we want to make sure we can use all of the functionality that Office allows us. And the only way to do that is to make sure we convert our documents into the new format. XML formats, of course, have different file name extensions, and that's usually the first thing that you'll notice. One of the general things to know is that if you see an X, that designates that it's XML. If you see an M, that actually designates that it's a macro-enabled XML file. Remember that we said that by default XML doesn't include the macro language? When we can save it as macro-enabled, then it does. Think of it as a happy medium between the two. So the examples we'll see most often is that we're moving from .doc, .xls, .ppt, and .mbb, which are Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Access files in the binary format, to basically just adding an X to the end. That tells us that docx is the XML format of a Word document, and so on. That's a quick overview of XML 101, because you don't have to know all of its intricacies. There certainly is a lot more to learn, but this is what you need to know to make good choices when you start using the new versions of Office.